Hi, everyone. I am Professor Kristina Chew, and I will be teaching you in online medical terminology this semester. This video, I have to warn you, is going to be an awful lot longer than I try to make these videos because there's a lot of information to convey to you as you get started with this class. So hang on. If you have to watch it in segments, it's okay. And I've made some handouts and things for you to look at too. So again, let's get started. So first of all, about this class. We are using Canvas. We are not using Sakai. So if you are new to Canvas, do take some time to look at the site and get used to it. It is a little bit different from Sakai, I admit, but I think there are some good advantages to using Canvas. One of it is that there is a mobile app for Canvas that you should download and put on your phone or your iPad, your tablet, whatever, and use it. I have it on my phone, and I think it works a lot better than the Sakai one. And it means that, you know, if you are pressed for time, find that you only have your phone with you because you go home, you don't bring your laptop, you don't have internet at home, or it's not working as well. Hopefully using the app on your phone or your iPad will help you too. And, you know, sometimes it's useful to have more than one device, especially with this class, which is completely online with two small exceptions. Okay, so when you go to the front page, notice that there are these links that say Course Essentials. You should absolutely take a look at those. It gives you my contact info and also links you to, and it's a separate site created by Canvas or Rutgers, one of them, about how to use Canvas that I would suggest just looking that over briefly. My contact info definitely has my email and my phone number. I don't think you should need to call me too much, but email is usually the best way to find me. But you're welcome to do that if you absolutely need to. Okay, going back to this main page. The first thing you really need to do is to take a look at the syllabus. I'm going to point out some features about that in a moment, but do make sure you read through this whole thing. It gives you all the essential information, especially things like the schedule, how your grade's going to be decided. Again, I'm going to discuss that in a moment, looking at another handout, and what you'll need to do every week. Also, if you look at this syllabus, you'll notice that at the very end, there is a long list that says assignment summary. So this is a list of everything we're going to be doing this semester. I'm not kidding. You know, don't freak out when you see it. It just means that I wanted to give you an overview of what we'll be doing this semester so you'll get used to the work that you'll need to do. Also, you'll see, you know, there's a calendar that indicates things like due dates and lets you know, also keeps you informed about how these assignments are weighted. Another thing that you should look at, again, going back to the home page, and notice, so this course navigation here for our class is very simple. What you're really be needing to look at, especially, is this link that says modules, and I'm sure you want to look at grades and also people. I will note that there are 150 students in this class. As of right now, there is a waiting list with anywhere from about 20 students who have contacted me. There could be more. So if you do decide in the first week or two of this class is not for you, please drop it. Your spot is wanted by somebody else. Again, if you want to drop the class, please try to do so sooner rather than later, because somebody needs your spot, and it would be great to fill up all 150 spots. That's not to say I don't want you in the class, but just so you know, this class has a big waiting list. And well, modules. So you should take a look at this section. The top is the course essentials. That will stay there, so you can always know how to contact me, look for your support services about things that you might need. As you see, that includes things here like, I really don't think you'll need some of these things. Like, you will not need to worry about the writing center or the library for this class, but those things are there if you need them. What you will need to do is look at the modules. As you'll see, there is one for every week of this class. And generally, all of the modules contain things like a link to a lecture, which is a video lecture like this one, the readings, which are all from our wonderful textbook, discussion. Every week we have a discussion forum, which is your chance to really interact with other people in the class. The discussion forum for this first week asks you to post an introduction about yourself. And over, by the time of the second week, I will actually divide the 150 students, class up into smaller groups. But for this first introduction, I'm going to try something new, which is I want all 150 of you to post an introduction about yourself in one big forum so you can see who else is in this class. To post, there's instructions here, but basically you hit reply and put in your post about yourself. And then the requirements are always that you should respond to another person, at least. If you want to respond to more people, that's great. This first discussion also is not graded. It says 0 points. I will just make sure that you do it, and you should introduce yourself. I'd like to get to know you too. Other assignments every week, there will, in addition to the lecture and the readings, and these are not graded, by the way. That doesn't mean you're not supposed to do them, of course, but they're not graded. They're nothing that you don't have to turn in anything for these two. What you will have to turn in is your exercise. Every week you'll have an exercise based on the homework. It's called a quiz. It's just called a quiz because that's how I have to set up this exercise on through Canvas. But if you click here, you will get the whole thing and be able to start taking it or doing it. Please note also with these exercises, these homework assignments, you have unlimited. You can submit it an unlimited amount of times. You have no time limit on it because it's homework. So, you should welcome to open up the homework, take a look and see what's involved. And then if you don't have time to do the whole thing, that's totally fine. You probably won't because these homework assignments take a little bit of time. And as you'll see, they are based on the textbook. So one thing I'm going to say this a couple times during this lecture, you need to buy the textbook. It's available in the bookstore, but you can also buy it online, which I kind of recommend, actually. I have a Kindle version of the textbook myself, and I think it's pretty useful. The homework, well, right now, what I want us to do actually is not look over all of this, but just to let you know what you have to do for the class. So there's always a homework exercise to do for this class, and then there's a quiz. And you'll see that everything this week is due on Sunday by 11:59 p.m. because I figure that you're starting up your spring semester, you have a lot of other things to do, and you need to get a sense of the class, you need to get the textbooks. So everything's due this Sunday night by 11:59 p.m. or really by midnight. The quiz is similar in format to the exercises, but the difference is it's timed. You have an hour to do it. That should really be more time than you need. Most people need half an hour to 40 minutes. You can only take the quiz once, so keep that in mind. Once you open up the quiz, you cannot reopen it. You have to take it when you're ready. The quiz will not be available till Saturday morning. So you have, in other words, you have 2 days to get it done. And, well, it'll appear. If it doesn't appear, you should always contact me. And I should emphasize that point enough. This is an online class entirely. That means you need to stay in touch with me. And so one thing you should totally know is my email address. I respond as quickly as I can to email. And especially during the first week, I will respond very quickly. So please stay in touch with me. That is totally fine to email me about very little things. If ever an assignment doesn't work, if you have a very question, big or small, about an assignment, you should always contact me. I want to hear from you. And if you look through these modules, you'll see there is, again, one for every week. As you see, not all of them. The first 2 weeks list both the exercises and the reading and the lecture. If there isn't a discussion listed or a quiz, that's because I haven't either put it together yet and made it available to you, or I just haven't, it means I haven't been able to do that yet, or I haven't wanted to do that yet, but everything will appear. So for every week, you will have really 3 things to do: the exercise, the discussion post, and also the quiz. And as you'll see, I also have a post here for the midterm that will be during week 7. And I should tell you that we will actually cover all 20 lessons in our textbook. By the time we get to the final exam, which is cumulative, we'll have done quite a bit. So once again, take a look at Canvas, especially if you haven't used it before, and get used to using it, because we will be that will be where everything pretty much except for the midterm and the final will be based. So let me emphasize a couple of things though. So this, I have put together a kind of elaborate handout for you that you will have a copy of. And it's here. So lecture notes. So every week I'm going to make a video for you. Again, not as long as this one. And I'm also going to make lecture notes for you. So, you know, well, this is actually a relief of Asclepius, who was an ancient Greek god of healing, or possibly Hippocrates, who was an ancient Greek medical doctor treating a woman. And what can I tell you about medical terminology? Well, first of all, let's just go over again some of the requirements for this class. First of all, you absolutely need to buy the textbook. It's called Dunmore and Fleischer's Medical Terminology. It is available widely on the internet. You can buy an e-version of it. A Kindle version is really helpful, I think. And you can also, I recommend that you buy a medical dictionary, or possibly get a subscription to a medical dictionary. There's one online called Tabor's that's very good. There are a lot of websites that contain definitions of medical terms, and students have used them successfully in the past, but I think that the dictionary is much more authoritative, helpful, and reliable. If you do buy a hard copy of the dictionary, you get a code that enables you to use the website for free for a whole year, which I think is actually pretty useful. So I do recommend that. But it's not required, just recommended. Okay, let's talk about grades. So I gave you a little view of the homework assignments. The homework assignments, which are weekly, count for 25% of your grade. So that's really the main thing to focus on. Online participation, that really refers to the discussion forums. So you need to write 2 posts every week on a topic that I will give you. This week, again, the topic is on introducing yourself, and it's not graded. But generally, discussion forum posts will be on a topic about recent developments in healthcare. You know, with our new president being inaugurated this week, there's been a lot of talk about repealing Obamacare. And so that may come up in a post. That would be a medical topic to talk about. But also some other topics will be about medical ethics, like things like, you know, the using electronic health records, for instance. So those are worth 15%. You have to write 2 posts. There are quizzes every single week. Those are due on Sundays. Those are for 20% of your grade. And then there's also a midterm and a final. One thing to note about both the midterm and final for this class is that, yes, they're required. And also they are on campus, on the New Brunswick campus, usually, hopefully somewhere like at the new academic building, which is where the classics department is located. And they're on campus and in person. So even though this is an online course, I do like for you to have those exams done in person. And I show up for at least one of the midterms and finals. Scheduling these midterms and finals is a little bit of an operation, because there's 150 people in this class. This is an online class, and you all have totally different schedules, lives, work, jobs, everything. Things to do. So I usually offer the exams at 2 to 3 different times, and I really try to work hard to work around all of your needs. There'll be a lot more talk about that later. But just so you know, those are required. Your basic schedule, though, is that everything in this class is due on Friday or Sunday, and always at 11:59 p.m. On Friday is when your homework is generally going to be due, and also the first discussion forum post. Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Will be the weekly quiz and the second discussion forum post. This first week, everything is due on Sunday because I figured you need some extra time. But the reason for the discussion forum posts being due on separate days is that, well, I usually have them due on Sunday night, but that means that many people post both of the discussion forum posts on Sunday night, which means it's kind of hard to respond to someone else's posts when everyone's doing it at the last minute. So I would appreciate if you could try to put the first post up on Friday. That will give everyone time to see other people's posts and respond before the deadline, because I know some people like to have things done before the deadline. Not everybody works at the last minute. Once again, the midterm and the final are cumulative and in-person and required. Different dates and times to take them will be available. The midterm will cover all the material in the course up to week 7, and the final exam covers all the material presented in the course. So it is cumulative, yes. And there will be ample discussion and preparation about what will be on these exams beforehand, I promise. Okay, once again, this is my email address. You need it. Please use it a lot. It's fine to send me lots of email at any hour of the day, email about small things, large things, big things. I really will try to respond within a few hours, if not earlier. If I haven't responded within 24 hours, something's wrong. You might have the wrong email address, or your email terribly went to spam and I didn't check it. That should not happen. But really email me about anything. It's really important to stay in touch with this being an online class. And I hope I will have the chance to meet a lot of you, I hope, as I will proctor at least one of the midterm exams and the final exam sessions. And just a little introduction about me. Well, I'm in the Department of Classics at Rutgers. My official title is I am a teaching instructor. And I should also tell you that I actually don't live in New Jersey. I live in California. New Jersey, California. Here I am roughly around here. I live in Berkeley, California, in the Bay Area. I'm originally from out here, actually. And this is my family. That's me, obviously. This is my son, Charlie. He is 19 and a half. And this is my son, James Fisher. He's a professor of American Studies and History and Religion at Fordham University. Why do I live in California? Well, once upon a time, I lived in New Jersey. In fact, I was a professor at Seton Hall University and St. Peter's University in classics, honors, and English, different things, for really for many, many years. I taught at St. Peter's University in New Jersey. I was basically the classics department there for 9 years. I've been teaching classics and writing for over 20 years. My son is severely autistic with intellectual disabilities. He is unable to read or to write, and he has very severe developmental delays. He really can't talk. He talks in single words, basically. He would have been a sophomore in college this year. He's always gone to special programs or schools for autism. And for many years, we lived in New Jersey. He was actually born in St. Louis, Missouri, where my husband was a professor at the time. But Charlie, we lived in Hillsborough. We lived also in Cranford for many years, on the south side of the town, not far from the train station. Charlie has a lot of challenges. He loves to be active. He loves to ride his bike. And he used to love to swim. He loved going to Long Beach Island. As Charlie got older, though, life got a lot harder for him because because of the nature of his disabilities, which he has really severe difficulties with things like communicating. And with his academics, he is nowhere near grade level. He does academic work, really, I think that would be more considered something for pre-kindergarten or preschool. He really cannot read and write. And so as he got older, and it just became more apparent that he needed a lot more support, and that he needed to live in a place where it didn't snow so he could ride his bike year round and be outside. So my husband's originally from New Jersey, but actually my husband went to Rutgers for both his undergrad and graduate degrees. But we decided to move out to California when Charlie was turning 17 in 2013, because he really had some really big struggles. He was no longer able to go to a public school program for autism. He went to the Developmental Learning Center in Warren, where he did really well. But he really, really struggled a lot outside. My family is from California, and my husband's relatives most of them don't live in New Jersey anymore, as his parents had passed away. So we decided it was time to move Charlie. And it turned out to be a good move. Charlie has really benefited. There are more services out here for adults with developmental disabilities. Hope that will stay the same over the next over Charlie's lifetime. And he's actually after some adventures, because Charlie wasn't very happy to move out here in the beginning. If you know anything about autism, Autistic individuals like to have a lot of routine and familiarity in their lives, and Charlie was real familiar living in New Jersey, but he wasn't familiar living in California, let me tell you. So anyways, he's doing really well now, but he goes to a special school. It's called actually a Better Chance School. This is from the prom in a town called Richmond, and he has been doing really well. He gets a lot more support than he used to, a lot more as people to help him out here, and he's you know, he likes to work. He's learning how to do some simple jobs like janitorial work and very simple kind of clerk work like paper shredding, I think. But he likes living out here, so it's been really worthwhile for us to move out here. Even though moving out here meant that I had to give up my job at St. Peter's. I was an associate professor with tenure in classics there, and my husband originally was going to give up his job, but decided in the end to commute back to Fordham. So my husband goes back and forth between New York and Berkeley about every 2 weeks. And he stays out here, of course, during all the vacations, and I come out as much as I can myself. And I was really lucky that I knew some people at Rutgers University and our wonderful classics department, and they asked me to teach online classes, and I guess you could say the rest is history. I've been teaching for Rutgers since the spring semester of 2015. This is my 6th time teaching medical terminology, and I have to say I really enjoy it. No small part because I'm a classicist. I spent my undergrad degrees in classics and my graduate degrees in comparative literature, and spent all years and years teaching Greek and Latin and ancient history, mythology, all kinds of things. Also spent a lot of time going to the doctor, Charlie, and going to hospitals, and sometimes having some struggles there for him. It's not easy to be an autistic individual. He can't talking to a doctor when you don't feel well. So he had a lot of struggles. But again, Charlie's been doing well. We even took him to the doctor last week to get his TB test read, and Charlie sat in the waiting room and smiled, which was kind of incredible because he didn't used to smile too much in waiting rooms. So I appreciate all of you who plan to have a medical career, whatever you plan to do with public health, in being a dentist or being a physician's assistant or being a nurse. You know, I've encountered many wonderful medical professionals in life for Charlie who've really made his life and our lives a lot easier. So let's get down to business. Enough about me. Why am I, you know, a person, you know, with no actual medical background teaching medical terminology? Because, and you know, so some of this I'm going to talk about a lot of this handout, but you have this handout to read on Canvas, so you can. I do want you to read it all, but I'm going to try to provide you with the essentials you need to do your homework and understand what's going on. So about 3/4 of medical terminology in our English today is from Greek, and the rest is from Latin. The reason for this is that one of the how should we say? Well, until about the 18th century in the Western world, the practice of medicine was based on the writings of an ancient Greek writer, an ancient Greek physician named Hippocrates. So Hippocrates was an ancient Greek physician thought to have lived in the 5th century BC, a long time ago, the time of Plato and great tragedians like Aeschylus or Sophocles. And to Hippocrates is attributed something called the Hippocratic Corpus, which is a collection of writings about anatomy, the hemorrhoids, joints, gynecology, reproduction, the sacred disease or epilepsy. And Hippocrates and ancient Greek medical or practitioners or physicians are really some of the first who try to explain disease not through supernatural explanations or religious explanations or divine explanations, and you know, you became sick because the gods are angry at you. That would have been how an example of a supernatural explanation, but by what we do today, by observing a patient and trying to understand their symptoms. Why, you know, it maybe maybe someone is ill because they ate something wrong, or maybe someone is has some kind of condition because many years ago they perhaps had a different diet, or perhaps they engage in certain kinds of everyday activities, plowing fields, or life as a soldier, common in ancient Greece. So the writings of the Hippocratic, of Hippocrates and other ancient writers, medical writers, are gathered in something called the Hippocratic corpus. And these were very influential also among the ancient Romans who lived after the Greeks. Another ancient physician who was very famous is named Galen. Because the ancient Romans drew on the ancient Greeks' medical ideas, Latin was also used for many medical terms. And so that's the reason that Greek and Latin are so prevalent, or words based on Greek and Latin are so prevalent in medical terminology. It's also the reason that sometimes, studying medical terminology feels like studying a foreign language, because many of the terms are actually from foreign languages, and they're actually from languages that aren't used anymore. In fact, up until the 18th century, all medical texts that were used in Europe were written in Latin. And you can find many ancient examples of early texts, like, William Harvey on the circulation of the blood, that were written in Latin originally. So it is very helpful to learn Greek and Latin words and parts of words, especially prefixes and suffixes that are commonly used in medical terminology. You don't need to know Latin and Greek just to succeed in this class, though I will occasionally, as I will right now, explain some Latin and Greek grammar just to help, hopefully, some things make a bit more sense. So one thing you'll find is you may have found in looking at medical terms is that you can't, figure out, why something is spelled the way it is. Things don't make sense. Things don't seem to adhere to the rules that you may have learned in English. Many Greek words have actually come into English via Latin, which is much more commonly used. And of course, Greek also has this other little problem of it uses a different alphabet than we use in English and Latin. Sometimes a medical term that was originally used in Latin has come into English through French. So there's a spelling change there too. So interesting to me as a classicist, but maybe not so much to you. So you know this. You don't need to know the Greek alphabet to succeed in this class, but I think that it can be helpful to at least have some familiarity with some of the letters, and you may have run into them anyways in other classes like calculus. I'll just read the letters for you quickly. There are 24 letters in Greek, and Greek is a little bit different. It has, for instance, a lot more vowels than the English alphabet does, and especially it has some versions of some vowels, like the letter E, that are long and that are also short. So just taking a look at this alphabet. So here's the Greek letters and their Latin or English equivalents and a basic pronunciation. Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma. It's actually two forms for sigma. Tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. Now, I should say that this pronunciation that I've just read is not the pronunciation used in modern Greek. So if you know modern Greek, that sounded weird. Sorry about that. It's the pronunciation that classicists tend to use when teaching and studying ancient Greek. And it's based on what scholars think ancient Greek may have sounded like. What I wanted to point out here is these vowels. Greek has two E's, one called epsilon, a short E, eta, a long E, English letter E, only one A, only one I, or iota, U, or the upsilon. And then Greek also has two O's, a short O, omicron, and a long O, omega. So, and Greek also has some unusual consonants, namely some of the consonants in Greek, like psi, as in psychology, psi is what we call a double consonant, is actually a PS sound originally. So originally you would pronounce psychology as psychology. Greek does not have a letter H. And this affects some of the stems that we're the Greek bases or elements that we're gonna be learning. In a Greek word, when you want to have the sound of the letter H, you use a symbol which is called a rough breathing. It looks like this, a backwards apostrophe, and that gives the sense of an H sound. So, for instance, this is a Greek word, haima, which means blood. When I transliterate it, that means when I take the Greek letters and put them into English, I have to add the H. There's actually this rough reading thing here. Notice the Greek original is 4 letters. English is 5. Haima means blood. And then this is actually the root in English words like hemophilia or hemophiliac. You can also see here, this is actually the Greek spelling of the name Hermes. Hermes is the messenger god in Greek mythology. And his name in Greek does not have an H. It has this thing called a rough breathing. In Greek, the letter R is aspirated, which means that it's pronounced with a bit more breath as a than when a letter is not aspirated. Okay. And well, I just point this out because when a word in Greek has a letter R, the English, when it's turned into an English word, sometimes the R is written with an H to signify that aspiration. So that's what we see in rhinoceros. The H is added. There's no H in the Greek original. This is a Greek R. I know it looks like a P, but it's an R, row. Or sometimes a Greek word is written in English with a double R and then also an H. So this word diarrhea is a Greek word that actually would be spelled like this with just the double R, but in English it becomes diarrhea. We also see that RH in hemorrhage. And you don't have to pronounce these specially in English, of course. You just pronounce them with a single R, but that's what sometimes there's a double R in a English term. Greek has no letter C. It has only the letter K, which is kappa, which looks like a K, basically. So that's why sometimes you'll see words like keloid or cyst, even though we pronounce them differently in English because of the rules of pronouncing English. These words actually originally both come from Greek words that start with a K or a kappa. Also in Greek, there is something called diphthongs, which are very common. A diphthong, it refers to a vowel sound that's written with 2 letters. We have a lot of them in English, like C, E, tree, E, oi, and boy, oo as in soup or house, oo as in loop, for instance. Greek has several diphthongs. Generally, they're written as transliterated as 2 vowels, but sometimes a diphthong in Greek, like from this word oedema, which means a swelling, that actually gives us the word edema. Sometimes a diphthong in Greek, which has the 2 vowels, is written as 1 vowel in English. Also, because so many Greek words are also used in Latin, sometimes the Greek spellings are completely lost and come instead to us through Latin. That's the case with this word etiology. You notice etiology in English starts with a single letter E. In Greek, it's from a word aitio, which means a cause, which actually has an A and an I, but that gets lost and it turns into this E. You can read the longer explanation here. I mean, I'm not going to test you on these things. These are little points to keep in mind, and then I think they may make more sense when you start to look at the actual vocabulary in the textbook. Finally, some Greek nouns are simply used in English, hook, line, and sinker, as we say. So a good example of that is the word psyche, which means the soul, or the mind. That's from the Greek word for soul or breath, psyche or psyche. Has that psi, the double PS. Or the Greek word mania. Mania becomes mania in English, and it does actually mean madness or intoxicated in Greek. Sometimes a Greek word is used with a Latin noun added instead. So the word tetanus, which actually means like a stretching out, becomes tetanus in Latin and had an OS in Greek. Sometimes a stem is taken from a Greek word. So the stem from this Greek word kuklos, which means a circle. The stem is this part here. It's simply taken and E is added. And sometimes a Greek word is used, but the ending of the Greek word is dropped. An example of that is spasmos, which means spasm. So the OS is taken off. So in other words, sometimes an English medical term is formed by taking just a part of a Greek word, like the kuk, from this word, kuklos, or sometimes an entire Greek word is just used in English. But this is much more common to have part of a Greek word used in a medical term. So much for Greek grammar. On to what we have to learn. Okay, so our medical terminology textbook by Dunmore and Fleischer is filled with something called bases for you to learn. Having said which, I use this term base, and what it refers to is the stem of a Greek or Latin word that's used to form a medical term. The book uses a separate term, which is called combining form. I don't care to use that term. I think it's a little bit more complicated and complicates things. But just so you know, whenever the book says combining form, it means base. What can I tell you? So what you'll see is, if you look at the textbook, actually, and let me bring you back to the textbook here. So I will show you my wonderful Kindle version of our wonderful textbook. Let's see. Okay, where's the textbook? Here's the textbook. Okay. Let's see if I can get you to the cover. Oh, come on. Don't you want to show me the cover of our wonderful book? Okay, so this is our wonderful textbook, which you have to get. You can't survive in this class without it. Just gotta warn you. And so, because I know that you may not have time to get the book because maybe you want to buy a Kindle version or a used version, which I actually have a used copy of the book too. I've given you PDFs of the first 3 lessons. It will not happen for the entire semester. You need to buy the textbook. So, this is the first chapter. So all of the chapters of this book pretty much follow the same format. They give you an explanation, and the book's explanations, while certainly helpful, one reason I've written in my own notes and go on like I'm going on right now is because sometimes I think they're a little they don't always explain everything that you need. But you will see that this book has a lot of vocabulary, and pretty much you need to learn all of it, yes. So lesson 1 is full of this long list of prefixes. You need to learn this, you need to learn these suffixes, and you need to learn this vocabulary. Not every lesson has long lists of prefixes and suffixes, but every lesson does have a vocabulary section. This vocabulary section is full of stems, or in other words, terms terms from Greek or Latin that are used in medical terms. And so this is the vocabulary we'll be learning here for the first lesson. So let us talk a little bit about what those are. Okay. So bases or combining forms. Just another little point about Greek grammar. Greek and Latin are what are called inflected languages. So this means that in order to know how a Greek or Latin word is used in a sentence, you have to look at the ending. Or Latin words, well, when you change the endings on a noun, it's called declining. You change the endings on a verb, it's called conjugating. If you studied Spanish or French or Italian or German, well, the first 3 are called Romance languages. So this concept of conjugating may be familiar. There's always kind of a base of the word that stays the same, and then the ending changes. Same thing happens in Latin and Greek. You change the endings of the word. What I've noted here is actually the endings for these that nouns can have. Nouns change their endings according to something called cases, and these are the names of the cases: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, vocative. You don't really need to know this too thoroughly. We talk a little bit about the nominative and the genitive and the accusative a little bit in a later chapter, so I'm just introducing this terminology now. I think it's a little confusing for you to have to know this at once because it's not really essential to succeeding in this class, but I do need to point it out. So generally, when you have a Greek or Latin word, there's always a stem. It doesn't change, and then you add the endings, and that shows the different use of a word in a sentence. So for instance, this is a Greek sentence in Roman letters, algos esti kakos, that says pain is bad. So notice algos, which means pain. It has an os ending here. In this other sentence, Socrates aisthenai algon, pain, Bill. Algon has an on ending here. That's because algon is used in this sentence as a direct object. It's the thing that Socrates feels. Whereas in the first sentence, algos is in what we call is the subject of the sentence. It's in what's called the nominative case. pain is bad versus Socrates feels pain. And then what I'm trying to point out is that the endings on these words differ. There's an OS in this word when it's a subject, an ON when it is an accusative, when it's a direct object. But one thing stays the same. Notice that this ALG, alg, is the same. So that's called the stem of the word. And for, in other words, it's what we call the base. And the bases, these stems, are really what you need to focus on learning. And happily, the book gives you the bases. You don't have to figure them out yourself. But that's how the book figures them out, by going through lots of Latin and Greek words and just finding the basis for you to learn. So those bases are all what is in your vocabulary. So why does it matter? Well, now we're going to get to the nitty-gritty, finally. Okay, so many medical terms are formed by taking a Greek or Latin stem or a base that refers to an anatomical part, a condition like pain, an action, etc. Then medical terms are formed by adding prefixes. These may show where a condition occurs, like above or in or on or beside, and suffixes, which gives some more detail about a condition. Sometimes something called a connecting vowel is added. It's often the letter O. And the connecting vowel is added for the principle of what is called euphony, which just makes the word sound better, or at least it made the word sound better to whoever thought of the word. And more readily pronounced. So these charts give you an idea of what you'll be doing for your homework. In many parts of your homework, you're given a medical term like psychosis, and you need to break it down into parts. In other words, into its base, psych, and into a suffix, osis. So this is one of the suffixes on that suffix list from the textbook. Psych means mind. Osis means an abnormal or diseased condition. And so by knowing those two things, you can come up with a definition that psychosis is an abnormal condition of the mind. Another example here is the term prenatal. The term prenatal breaks down into a prefix, pre, before, a base, not or nat, meaning to be born, and al, a suffix meaning pertaining to. So you can put all those terms together to know that you have a term meaning pertaining to before being born. I guess you could say pertaining to, you know, what happens before a baby is born. It sounds a little bit better in English. Okay, so again, what you're going to do a lot of for this homework assignment, or homework assignments, and on the quizzes, is you get medical term. You need to look at the list of prefixes, suffixes, and bases, and break down the term into those parts. From those parts, you can figure out what the word means. Complications. There's always complications. Yes. Some medical terms have more than one base, like neuropathy. It has two bases, neur, which is a nerve or a neuron. It has path, which means a disease. It has a connecting vowel, the O. And it also has a suffix, E, which means a state or condition. So a neuropathy is a state of disease of the nerves. And this breaking down thing that I've been doing is really the basis of a lot of our homework assignments. It's a big part of each exercise and of each quiz. It's called word analysis on the homework. The word analysis is itself from Greek. We can break down the word analysis into a prefix, ana, up, back, against, throughout, li, a base, that means, it's from a Greek verb that means destroy, to break down, and sis, another suffix meaning a state or condition. It is a state of destroying throughout. Analysis. So when you break down words, what you should try to do is first to look at the middle of the word to look for the base. So notice that that's in the middle of the word here, like li, le, however you want to pronounce it. And then look for the prefixes like ana and the suffix like sis. And keep in mind, medical terms may use any combination of bases, prefixes, and suffixes. They may have more than one base, prefix, or suffix. Like here we have incontinent actually uses, these are actually two prefixes, in and cont, and anti-inflammatory, anti and in are actually both prefixes. So these are some specific suggestions for doing the homework exercises. They may not make sense in this video, but when you start doing the homework, I think they will. So again, you get this handout. I do use it to refer to. Some bases end in a letter I, like cardi, which means heart, as in cardiac, or crani, which means skull, as in cranial. So if you have a word with them, well, this word pericardium, for instance, breaks down as pericardium. So when a base ends in an I, you can do one of two things. You can either leave the base as is, put it in parentheses. So, you know, because what happens is actually that this final I gets absorbed into the suffix ium. Ium is a suffix meaning a membrane. Or you can break down the word just looking at the word, the spelling of the word itself, and assume that that ending I gets absorbed into the suffix. Those are both correct. And so, you know, I individually go through everybody's homework assignment. I look at all the questions and, you know, I give you points. If you've, you'll see the homework assignments are automatically corrected by Canvas, by the software program, but software is not human. I am human. And I like to make sure you have all the points that you can get. So I do actually go through all of your homework assignments to make sure that the software program didn't miss something. So some other complications that arise during doing the homework. Well, some of the suffixes you'll see look kind of like some of the other suffixes. For instance, osis and cis. So these are two suffixes with slightly different but kind of similar meanings. Cis simply means a state or condition. Osis means an abnormal or disease condition. And you can read this explanation here. Osis has some very specific uses that the book helpfully notes on page 10. So it especially it has the specific meanings when it's used to describe a certain organ or body part, as in the word nephrosis. When it's used in the base site, which means a cell, like in the term erythrocytosis, and also when it's used in an adjective, like in the word stenosis or sclerosis. So take a look at this. Generally, you're going to see the suffix osis when you have a medical term that refers to some kind of disease or illness or unusual condition, some kind of abnormality, which it is true, a lot of medical terms do describe. Whereas cis refers more to something that is simply a state or condition. There's no sense of illness, as in the words prognosis, diagnosis, or analysis, or symbiosis. Sorry. However, it's often not always clear which term to use, which suffix to use. And if that's the case and you're confused, it's fine if you use either suffix. Make sure that you note this is the connecting vowel when you use cis. There's no connecting vowel with osis. I will accept either, and I do go and check to make sure that you get credit for noting either of those. So this may not make sense right now. When you do the homework, it will. Final point. One section of the homework after you break. So in the homework, you have to break down these medical terms, and then you have to provide definitions for them. What you may find, I want you to make a definition up based on what the, elements in the medical term mean. However, sometimes the definition that you get when you look just at the elements in the word, it's not exactly what the official meaning of the word is. So for all intents and purposes in this class, especially at the start, provide a definition that's based on what the terms mean. For instance, symbiosis, well, literally it means a state of living together. Living from bi, soon means together with. But the official definition is that it is an interaction between two different physical organisms living in close physical proximity. That's from Tabors. This top definition is totally fine for the homework, but I do encourage you to go look the words up after you've figured out definitions for them and check your answers against what you see in a medical dictionary. But again, a very literal definition is accepted. This might be more clear in a word like dialysis, which, which has the official definition of the passing of a solute through a membrane. But when you just look at the terms, the elements in the word means a state, a cis, of destroying a part. Also anencephaly, which, the definition you get, the literal definition, a state, E, of lacking on, that's a prefix, a brain. That actually is pretty close to the official definition, absence of a large part of the brain or skull. But again, because the purpose of this class is for you to be able to look at a medical term and without having to look it up in a dictionary, just to look at the roots of it to understand what it means. That's why I do really encourage you to go for a literal definition first, put that in your homework, it'll be correct. So long as you followed, what the roots of the words mean, and then really try to go look it up in a medical dictionary. So it's my long-winded explanation here to our handout, but I refer you back to the homework assignment. I know and again, most of the videos will not be this long. It's just that this particular video has so much fun because we have to want to make sure you know what to do as we get started in the class. What I do recommend is, really start looking at the exercise. Maybe you're even looking at it right now or listening to me. And, go through the homework assignment. If you can always ask me questions before you submit. You don't have to wait until, you turn it in. When you submit your homework assignment, you will get immediate feedback. And not so much the quiz, you won't get immediate feedback, but you will get feedback pretty quickly. So once you submit your homework, you'll see what you did right or wrong. And again, if the points that look very low in the homework, there's some sections that I have to actually add the points to. Do not worry about that. You will get the points that you need. And especially because it is the first week of class, take your time with things and ask questions. And well, I'm glad to get to know you. I look forward to meeting as many of you as I can when it's time for the midterm and the final. But most of all, I'm really glad you're taking this class, and I really enjoy teaching it. Everyone seems to learn a lot and to get a lot out of it, and I always like learning about you and all of your experiences and what your plans and hopes are. Ask me questions. Welcome to the spring semester at Rutgers, and I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.